Alrighty, so welcome everybody to today's session on Ubiquiti, UniFi OS and the Gen2 switches. This is an overview webinar. Just wanted to let you know that the session is being recorded and will be available on demand as soon as we finish. So if at any time that you do need to head off, unfortunately, then rest assured that this session is being recorded. You can have a look at it later in the fact. So I just wanted to personally introduce myself. My name is Darren. I am the new National Training Manager here at Leader. So I'm still fairly fresh, still learning about how amazing all the Ubiquiti equipment is. For your reference as well, I've also got our Ubiquiti Product Manager, Chris Sutherland, on the line. So as today goes through, if we do have any questions, and by all means, at any time, while we're on the slideshow question, make sure that you do chuck it into the chat box through GoToWebinar. We would be more than happy to work as a team here to answer those questions at any time. So thank you very much for having me and joining me today for our session, and let's get started. As you're well aware, we do have a chance to win a prize for just attending this session, and as you can see here, it is the UniFi Switch 16 PoE. So just for attending, and make sure that you do stick with us all the way through, all the way till the end, and then we're going to do the lucky winner, draw the prize to see who is today's lucky winner. But for those of you who is watching the recording after the fact, then apologies, you will not be eligible as it is a live prize draw, that one there. So, but thank you very much for watching, and let's get started. So today's webinar is an overview covering off the latest features across the UniFi Dream Machine Pro, or UDM Pro, as a lot of you out there like to call it, and the latest UniFi Gen2 switches. Our aim for today is that we hope to upskill you on the best-selling features of all these devices and hopefully teach you something about them that you may not have already known. And we're going to start today's session with the UDM Pro. Now, I just want to be absolutely clear that we're covering off the existing UDM Pro, where I know recently Leader and Ubiquiti themselves also released some content regarding to an SE version, but there's more details to come on that one in the future. But this particular presentation is all about the current version of the UDM Pro. So the UDM Pro is an enterprise-grade UniFi OS console that offers an all-in-one networking console and runs every UniFi OS application. It features a built-in security gateway, an 8-port managed switch with an integrated network video recorder for UniFi Protect. Additionally, there's advanced redundancies in the UniFi Smart Power connectivity on the back, which provides redundant power in the event of any AC power loss. Now, recently, Ubiquiti have actually overhauled their experience on the UniFi OS console, offering a more modern look and feel. Here, in the intuitive user interface, you can have a complete overview of your environment. It's able to show you everything you need across your network in one pane of glass. Things like uptime, client devices, access points, as well as any traffic data. You can see insights to make changes on your network on the fly, all from inside your console. And the best part about having a UI account is you can make all these changes through the different Ubiquiti suite of mobile apps. So anytime that you're away from your business or house and you need to see what's happening, or if you need to make a quick change to provide a better user experience, you can. And that's one of the great things that the UDM Pro does offer, obviously able to be connected to anything. And we see a lot of prosumers and small medium businesses actually taking these ones up as a more complete solution. We're going to go through a little bit more about that today, where obviously in the past Ubiquiti have had different devices that all link together to give you that complete solution. Well, we're finding that the UDM Pro is actually that one console that provides that one pane of glass, integrates all the suite of applications, all the suite of devices into one console, to make sure that it is the right solution for them. So going through more of the product and more of the benefits that UDM Pro has, it does feature a built-in security gateway that offers an advanced firewall policy and persistent threat management features that any home or business can actually benefit from. And a few of these, such as threat management, where you can easily select and customize levels of security for viruses and malware, point-to-point protection and any hacking or internet traffic and website reputation. There's also endpoint scanning. The UDM Pro automatically scans endpoints like your client devices or laptops or mobile phone anything connected to the network to identify any potential security threats or vulnerabilities. There's also things called honeypot. Embedded honeypot functionality can actually detect malware and worms and other types of malicious traffic, try to scan your network for any vulnerability. So if you are in not the best sort of environments, or you're bringing in other devices, then honeypotting can actually have a look at those devices more granularly. DNS content filtering can actually block traffic from sites with malicious phishing or maybe some adult content. And there's also 3 levels of DNS filtering security, each adding more protection. There's also geo-IP filtering, which allows you to block outgoing and incoming or bidirectional traffic designated by the country. So if you haven't recently looked into the UI console, then there's also a map, so you can see where all the traffic's going in and coming from. So you can actually pinpoint that location more accurately using the map. Is definitely great for people who want to see where things come from a visual perspective. You can use the UniFi threat map, as I said, to select the countries you intend to block. So if you want to specifically block content from specific countries, then you can do that all directly from the UI console.
Hey Darren,
so
we've just got a couple of questions so far. If you wouldn't mind jumping back just one slide, there's some really
Sure.
good questions coming up in the question system. So thank you very much to everybody. Please keep them coming. It's really great and it keeps us all interactive. And obviously, the more questions we get, the more that everyone learns, which is great. So one of the things, just jumping back a little bit to the UDM Pro, one of the questions we had from Dean Piero was, with regards to the WAN ports, how does the failover work? Is there failover in the UDM Pro like there is with the older USG models? Yes, absolutely there is. So there's a couple of WAN ports available on the UDM Pro. There's the RJ45 WAN port as well as the SFP WAN port. If you do need 2 RJ45 WAN ports, we've got some adapters from Ubiquiti that go from SFP to RJ45. It's just a little SFP module that you can slot in there, and then you can do all the failover and that sort of thing with multiple WAN ports as you used to doing on the USG. So that was a really good question. Thank you very much for that, Dean. And then with regards to the honeypot that Darren mentioned a short while ago, somebody was just asking, Elvin Lusik was asking, how does that honeypot work? Do we have any more sort of advanced documentation on it? Unfortunately, not at the moment, but I'm very happy to ask Ubiquiti. They've got a really good team that we're in contact with. I'll try and find out a little bit more information about that. And for anybody who wants to know, I'll happily provide that after this webinar. So another really good query, but unfortunately, we just don't have that information right now, but we will definitely find it. And then lastly, another really good question was, can the UDM Pro be adopted to an existing UniFi controller? This is something that comes up quite a lot. At the moment, no, it's not a security gateway on its own. This thing has the controller and all of the software built into it. So it's a standalone device. So it has to act as the main sort of central controller. So it can't be adopted by another third-party controller at the moment. It's got to be a central unit on its own. That being said, Ubiquiti is coming out with some really good gateway products, security gateway products, some advanced ones that can be adopted to remote controllers. More on those a little bit later. They're still in early access, so we don't have too much information on them at the moment, but they are coming really soon and they look to be epic. But as it stands at the moment, the UDM Pro cannot be adopted to a third-party controller. So that's it for the questions for the moment. We'll pick them up as we go on. So yeah, please keep them coming. I'm going to keep answering them in that query window. Darren, if you don't mind, I'm going to stop you as we go through every once in a while just so we can answer a couple of them. But back over to you. Thank you.
by all means, please do. Love these questions coming through. As I mentioned, I am still relatively new at this, so this is all a great learning experience for us all, and it's awesome to have Chris on board here to, as you have just seen, answer some of these great, and for me, some of the different questions coming through. So it's fantastic to see that everyone's really excited about this UDM Pro. Hopefully I can answer some of these questions as we go along in the content that we're going to be going through today, but by all means, just keep jumping those questions straight into the chat box and we'll be more than happy to answer them as we go through. So as we continue through, talking specifically about threat management, we want to make sure that you can enable some of these features and really tighten up that security through it. So I just want to give you a bit of a demo to see how this is done on the UDM Pro. As you can see here, we're just in the console at the moment. We're just going to jump straight down into the settings network here, and then across into security. And then in security, as you can see here, we've got internet threat management and then also traffic and device modification. So we're just going to go into these particular ones here. In the UniFi network section, headings, we can enable internet threat management, and you can give you access to things like intrusion prevention or IPS and intrusion detection or IDS. Underneath here, we're going to see the system sensitivity. Now, there's actually 5 different levels that are predefined with predefined security levels that have been loaded in from Ubiquiti themselves. You can level these up, and as you can see through the UDM Pro, as the video plays through, it goes from anywhere between 0 all the way up to 35 different customization points that you can go through. So what we do recommend to do is just have a read through all the bits and pieces. Now you can, and to understand a little bit more what they mean and how they can benefit your network by turning things on or off. If you selecting 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5, then things are going to be turned on automatically. But by all means, you can then scroll down all the way through this and then turn the things off that you don't think is necessary for your specific network. Chris, did you have anything else that you wanted to cover off on that particular one? Maybe you want to highlight any of those points before?
Yeah, absolutely. So a lot of these features that you see playing in this video here, as Darren mentioned, as you go through the security levels from 1 to 5, some of these features get turned on or off. I have to just sort of make mention that as these features get turned on, obviously this uses more and more processing power because there's a lot more packet analyzing and that sort of thing going on in the background. So just be wary if you do crank this all the way up to maximum, it is going to have an effect on your performance. Nothing massive. Obviously, this thing is built to handle gigabits per second worth of speed. But if you do have multiple gigabits worth of internet traffic going through here, you just have to take it into consideration. That's why some of these devices like the USG and the USG Pro 4 don't actually have the full suite of these options available like the UDM Pro does, because they may not have all of the horsepower that the UDM Pro's got available to it. And then just with regards to some of the security features, there's a lot in here, but you know, to name a few, as Darren mentioned, there's the honeypot scenario, there's VoIP protection filters, and what I really enjoy is the IP ban lists as well. So there's a lot of public IP address lists out there of people who are doing some really nasty things, and they're obviously kept in a really good database. Ubiquiti keeps this up to date on a daily basis and just stops anybody who's inside that ban list from accessing your network and obviously talking to your device. So it's a lot of features and functionality built in here. And one of the best things is it's license free. You don't actually have to pay for any of this functionality. You know, that's the typical thing with Ubiquiti. You pay for the hardware, and everything here is just turn it on and away you go. There's no pay per feature or monthly subscriptions or anything like that, which is really cool to see. So yeah, I really urge you guys to have a good fiddle with this. Have a look at some of the features and functions in here. There's a lot going on in the background of these UDM Pros now in terms of security, and we're actually going to get into some next steps as well, which take it even further. Yeah, so I'll hand back over to Darren for that.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. So yeah, as Chris mentioned, as the more you wind it up, the more CPU usage it does use. But as we mentioned before, the UDM Pro is built for this sort of stuff. When we move across into the traffic and device management, we can go into to go really one step further to a little bit more granular. So here we can manage the user's access mainly around the specific apps or groups of apps that you want to really protect your environment from. So when we go into the security settings and into traffic and device management, we want to firstly enable the deep packet inspection, and then we can click on restriction definitions. And clicking on the three dots as we just saw, you'll be able to, you need to select the category that you want to select through. So here we're really going to do instant messaging, as we do find that this is a popular form of communicating between friends and colleagues, specifically while they're on work. So we want to make sure that if you're in that environment, or that you want to keep productivity at its optimal performance, and you want to restrict some of the access that people can do on their devices that are connected to it, whether on a PC or on the mobile phone in the area that they're connected to. Here we've got selected a couple of different applications like WhatsApp and Hangouts, and then after the fact, you can actually turn on or off the extra parts there. So you can turn into whether you'll block the traffic entirely or just log the events and enable the restrictions themselves. Once you're happy with your configuration, just click on add the restrictions to apply them. And then if you want to pinpoint a section of your network, you can. Once your restriction definition is defined, then you can click on either your wired or your wireless networks, and then you can apply the rule, whether you've got, as I said, the wireless or wired, and then you can define it by VLAN or specific, wireless network available, even going through the specific access point. And then once you're happy with everything, then all you need to do is scroll down and click on apply the settings. So I just want to point out that what we've just demonstrated to you today, and what Chris has mentioned there as well, is that all of these features are included features of the UDM Pro right out of the box. There's no additional features, there's no device add-ons or anything, it's just included with it. So these included features of the UDM Pro are typical of advanced firewall features, typically found in high-end enterprise brands. So once again, showing you all the value the UDM Pro can bring to any environment who's fairly security conscious. As we've also mentioned, this is mainly due to the upgrade in performance hardware built into the UDM Pro, and that's across its new quad-core ARM processor. While still being able to, everything turned on, we're still able to get 3.5 gigabits worth of IPS and IDS throughput performance. But just showing off the USG and USG Pro here, so we don't want to discourage them. But as you can imagine, new technologies come through, new advanced performance ways that we can help everything have the right, you want to make sure that you've got the right hardware that is able to detect and prevent any potential security attacks, as well as ensuring you have the best possible network performance, and that's essential for any environment. So I just want to highlight that the UDM Pro there is built for this sort of stuff from the ground up. I know there's a couple questions that we had in there before in regarding to the LAN ports. On the front of the UDM Pros, you know that we've got an 8-port gigabit switch. There's two 10 gig WAN ports. One is an RJ45, the other is an SFP Plus for connecting fiber. And as Chris did mention before, there's a great little add-on here for the ProSend VDSL2 SPF modem. This allows you to connect your custom's older ADSL or ADSL2 Plus services or the NBN fiber to the node directly to the UDM Pro without the need of a separate modem. So when you're talking to clients about the potential of including a UDM Pro into their environment, don't forget to ask them what sort of internet they're running, so they have everything covered for the deployment. And don't worry if your second WAN isn't fiber or ADSL, because there's a third WAN that is RJ45 ready for your Teltonica 4G backup. So just a reminder that none of these ports are PoE ports on this particular model of the Dream Machine Pro.
Hey Darren, I'm just going to interrupt you for a second, because we've got a load of questions and I'm struggling to keep up. So thank you very much to everybody for the questions. You guys are firing them through thick and fast, but I can't type fast enough. Just a couple of things. With regards to the USG, somebody's mentioned, Andrew May mentioned he's got a USG 3 port, one of the previous gen devices, which is still going to be available for the foreseeable future. They're not going anywhere. But his question is can he move that config for the one that he's already got onto the UDM? And the answer is yes, you absolutely can. You can export the network configs and move them across to the UDM Pro. Nothing wrong with doing that. So that's a really good question. So thank you very much for that. And then the next one was with regards to the UDM Pro SE that's coming out. We don't necessarily have an exact ETA of when this is going to be released. It's still in early access, but we estimate it's going to be Q4. A lot of you are asking for the release date of that. We estimate it's going to be Q4 this year, but please don't hold us to that. We don't know just yet. This is not going to replace the UDM Pro. It'll just be a sort of separate product because it's going to have extra features like the PoE switch and that sort of thing, but it will be at a slightly higher price point. So I don't foresee it replacing the UDM Pro altogether. It'll be an additional product to their lineup and their offerings. And then, sorry, one last one before I hand back over to Darren. A lot of you are asking about the spare WAN ports that Darren just mentioned now. So yes, the SFP ports, it's one SFP WAN and one SFP LAN, but you can sort of chop and change the config of those. So you can dedicate, both of them to WAN ports and do failovers between the two and all that sort of thing. You have to be on the latest version of the firmware, but that is now available for you to do. So you can chop and change that config as you see fit. All right, I'm going to carry on answering these questions in the back end. Darren, back over to you.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that. Love these questions. Very good. So I just wanted to also point out that there is also a 3.5-inch hard drive bay built for UniFi Protect NVR. Just a friendly reminder that the UDM Pro does not come with a hard drive included. However, Leader are bundling the UDM Pro with an 8 terabyte surveillance drive pre-installed. So this is an obvious choice when you're deploying a UDM Pro for surveillance applications with UniFi Protect. Now, as we've gone through, the UniFi Dream Machine Pro has all of the OS applications, specifically the network for all the access points, as well as Protect for all the UniFi cameras, like the G4 Pro and the G3 Flex. You've also got the Access, which is a new addition to the UniFi suite of devices. We've got the Access Hub, and you've also got the Access Hub Reader Pro and Lite. You may have also heard of UniFi Talk. I did see someone ask about the UniFi Talk application coming to Australia. Now, this is currently only available in the US, but we wanted to let you know here that we're actually in talks with Ubiquiti, and there's a high likelihood of this becoming available in Australia this year. So that's very exciting for those people who are very interested in UniFi Talk. Chris, did you have anything further to add in regards to UniFi Talk?
Yes, we've actually been in contact with the engineers directly on this, and the launch in the US has been very successful. But the way that the UniFi Talk platform works is it's dedicated to US carriers. So in other words, you log into this thing, you say, I want 10 phone numbers. It basically goes to a VoIP provider of your choice. It's got a couple of drop-down lists there, and it gives you a couple of VoIP phone numbers, and you start making and receiving calls. In Australia, we wanted something a little bit different. We wanted them to open it up to third-party SIP providers, which they now see the benefit of doing. So they're starting to do that in their firmware. It's a little bit clunky at the moment, but we've tested it. It does work. You can get this system to start talking with third-party SIP providers and getting phone calls in and out. So they are looking at this, and they're redesigning a lot of the back end of the software. So we're looking at seeing this hopefully Q4 this year, but they're really helping us out, and their dev team's working with us actively to get this working properly in Australia before they do a full launch. So when this does come out, it should work really, really well and be very simple to use. Like I said, at the moment, it does function, but it's very clunky the way that you have to configure it and get it running. So yeah, more coming soon, hopefully.
Fantastic, thank you. And we'll probably end up running another webinar once that's all ready to go. So keep an eye out for that one in the future. So we're going to switch gears here now into the Gen 2. So before we get started on that, was there any questions that we needed to finalize for the UDM Pro before we switch on to the Gen 2 switches? So there's actually three categories here: Standard, Pro, and Enterprise, all offering their unique advantages. Everything that was popular on the Gen 1 switch has been ported across over to the Gen 2 switches, but there's a couple of different advantages on upgrading to the Gen 2. Across the range, each switch can be centrally managed, which is obviously a plus when you're managing the devices remotely or on behalf of somebody else. And this is all via the same UniFi controller. They are all VLAN capable, which can be deployed in seconds. So we want to make sure that that's really easy to function. And if you've got the applications, you can do it all directly through there as well. So as long as you're connected through their cloud key with the UI account. They will come with an addition of a new 1.3-inch LCD touchscreen that provides your basic statistics on how the devices are running. And if you've also got multiple Gen 2 switches that are stacked in one rack, you can synchronize the settings across all of them. So if you touch or swipe across one screen, it actually mimics across the rest of them. So that saves so much time rather than swipe on one, then swipe the same way on 2, 3, 4, and so on. If you synchronize them all, you can swipe on one and then everything else follows suit. So that's a fantastic addition to that one there. And then with the new touchscreen, you can also enable augmented reality. Now, this is specific for iOS users only. So once all the switches are synced, you can hover your iPhone over the switches and you can see the ports, see what each port is connected to all through the screen of your mobile phone. So I think that's absolutely fantastic. Unfortunately, it is only for iOS users. So for those Android users out there, we hope that this will come soon to them as well. But just at the moment, it is for iOS users. One of the best features of the Gen 2 switches is that they actually offer near silent cooling. Actually, the UniFi standard switches are fanless and use, so as you were well aware, like the Gen 1 switches were quite noisy, but the Gen 2 standard ones are fanless, meaning that they can be deployed anywhere and they're cooled passively. Now, just on that, the Gen 2 standard switches, because they are passively cooled, it's probably best that you don't stack these on top of each other. As you can imagine, things might get a little bit too hot and they can't cool themselves down as efficiently as possible. So that don't deter that from picking the standard version. They're great to deploy on their own in smaller environments where it's just the one switch that you need. On the Pro, PoE, and Enterprise switches, however, they're physically cooled, and as you can see here through this the video, they are physically cooled with its improved integrated fan design. It also has automated control sensors that monitor the workload and ensure the fans and cooling system perform in its optimal range all the time for best performance. Now, one of the little less known features for both the Pro and the Enterprise switches is that they integrate emphasize some layer 3 functionality, such as inter-VLAN routing, static routing, and one of the best features that we wanted to bring to light is a DHCP server. This allows you to deploy multiple router networks within your environment without the need for additional gateways or routers. Chris, do you have any examples of where these sort of features can be useful?
Yeah, we've actually had a couple of scenarios like this. So just to set a bit of a scene or a lay of the land for everybody, picture yourself having a fairly large building, maybe a couple of floors, 2 or 3 floors, and inside this building you've got various companies. Now, typically, each company would have their own internet connection, their own switch network, their own cable systems, which can get a bit expensive. If you're the owner of this building, and again, we've done this before, which worked out really well, you can actually provide all of that infrastructure and then basically segment the network for all of those companies internally. So they can all technically share the infrastructure, share the switches, share the internet, that sort of thing, but without any sort of cross-pollination of data. So they won't be able to see each other's files and PCs and servers, that kind of thing. Now, that can get very expensive to do in traditional network methods where you would have to have different routers and gateways and different firewall settings and all that sort of good stuff. So what you can do with having layer 3 on the switches themselves is you can segment segment the networks via VLANs, and then you can create DHCP servers on those VLANs and obviously control who can see what and what can be done directly on the switches themselves. Again, eliminating any need for extra routers, extra gateways. It's a lot more cost effective to do it that way, having these DHCP servers and routing functionality on the switches themselves than chucking extra hardware at it the entire time. So that's one of the main sort of major selling features for having a layer 3 managed switch that supports that sort of functionality. So I hope that makes sense to everybody. Feel free to raise any extra questions you have about it, but we've deployed that once or twice with a couple of companies, and it's worked very, very well in the past.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. So, all right, let's talk about one of the main differences between the Gen 1 and Gen 2 switches. This is mainly around the PoE configuration that they've got. On the Gen 1 switches, all the ports support a PoE. When you're working with your customers, understanding their environment is essential when looking at upgrading their switches to Gen 2. The biggest thing to remember, like the Gen 1 switches, there are PoE and non-PoE versions of these switches themselves in the standard and the pro versions. When you're browsing at Leader Dealer Shop, please double check before making your order. Now, the standard PoE switch, as you can see, not all the ports are enabled with PoE Plus. As you see on the 16 port, only half. On the 24, there's only 16, and on the 48, there's only 32. So essentially, 2/3 or like half or 2/3 of the ports themselves are PoE enabled. So that's really good to understand on the PoE standard edition. There's also on the 16 and 24 port, there's 2 SFP ports, and on the 48 port, there's actually 4 SFP ports, all 1 gigabit throughput. When we move on to the Pro PoE switch, like the Gen 1, all ports once again are PoE enabled, but on the Gen 2, what they've done here is a little bit different. They've enabled the first 16 with PoE Plus, but then the last 8 on the 24 port are actually PoE Plus Plus. And then the standard 2, they've upgraded from SFP to SFP Plus ports, offering 10 gigabit throughput there as well. And then the same again on the 48 port. The first 40 ports are PoE Plus, and then the last 8 are for PoE Plus Plus. There's also a higher wattage, and we'll go through a little bit of reason why they've upped that one there as well for the PoE throughput. Now, a recent addition to the switch lineup is the Enterprise switch. Now, again, they're all PoE Plus ports on theirs, but there's a little bit different on this one. As you can see here, there's 24 ports, but the benefit that these offer is that there's actually 24 auto sensing PoE Plus ports. They can either do 2.5 gigabit throughput or 1 gigabit throughput with 400 watt PoE budget on these ones here. Chris, can you help us understand why Ubiquiti have changed things regarding the PoE from the Gen 1 to the Gen 2 switches?
Yeah, they had a look at the sort of cost effectiveness of creating a switch that had all PoE ports versus a switch that just had, half of the plane being PoE and half being just regular gigabit or, 2.5 gig ports, etc. And, in typical terms, when you're installing a PoE switch, more often than not all of those ports will actually be used for PoE. If you're sticking a switch into a small company as an example that has, 10 PCs and maybe 12 CCTV cameras. Those 10 PC ports, they're going to be plugged into PoE-based ports, but they'll never actually use that PoE functionality. So you end up with a lot of wasted resources there. So you end up paying a lot more for a switch that you're not technically going to use to its full potential. So that's why Ubiquiti started ending up with these switches that had sort of half non-PoE and half PoE in the lower end of the tiers, at least, to try and help with those sort of scenarios to try and save a little bit more money. So it all came down to cost effectiveness. So now you can use the non-PoE sections for plugging in things like PCs and printers and the like that are never going to use that PoE, and then leave the second half of the plane for CCTV cameras, VoIP phones, that kind of thing, which actually do need that functionality. Of course, there are going to be some serious environments where you're going to need a full-blown PoE switch where you need every single port to be PoE, and that's where you start to get up to the Enterprise and the Pro series. So they still cater for that segment of the market, but on the lower end of the side, where they've got half non-PoE PoE and half PoE. It's just for the more budget conscious, just to make things a little bit more palatable when pitching to new users that aren't necessarily going to use the full load of the PoE switch. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, I think that's pretty smart what you've done here in regarding to, as you said, taking advantage of the device to its full potential and not underutilizing a device and you could potentially save some money on there as well. So the differences between the standard and the standard PoE, there's obviously going to be a different price point there. So make sure that when you're looking at it through our dealer shop that you are selecting the right one, making sure that you've done the research on the client's environment, making sure what devices they've got, does it need PoE, does it not need PoE, to make sure that you're providing the right solution for their deployment. So what can PoE do, or what sort of existing equipment does Ubiquiti have? So they've designed a whole lot of their equipment or devices that you would know of around PoE. There's PoE, PoE Plus, and even PoE Plus enabled devices throughout the Ubiquiti range, and these devices actually do require different amounts of power. So PoE has 15 watts of max power per port, and then PoE Plus is 30, and PoE Plus requires 60. Now let's have a look at what sort of devices you could use on those particular ones. With PoE, you can power up things like cloud keys or some of the cameras that are available at the moment. With PoE Plus, things like access points, Wi-Fi 6 access points. And with PoE Plus, you got things like the Switch Flex, which is an awesome one that can be powered up by PoE Plus, and then actually have PoE throughput to continue to power other devices. We've got a good example of that one there as well. Another really good example of what device can be powered up by PoE Plus is the brand new camera G4 PTZ, or the pan tilt zoom, which requires actually a lot more power than the standard PoE devices. So it's really good to understand that even if you've got a switch that has a mixture of PoE Plus and PoE Plus and even PoE, just understanding what devices, how much power that they require, and what Ubiquiti have really recommended, which ports to plug them into. So if you got a PoE powered device and you plugged it into a PoE Plus or PoE Plus, that's perfectly fine. The port can understand how much power it's going to have throughput for and power up that device. But if you're putting for instance, the new camera PTZ, G4 PTZ, that requires PoE Plus into a PoE port or PoE Plus port, that camera won't power up. It won't function. It will need to be powered up by a PoE Plus port to have full functionality. So let's see this in a sort of environment of what we've created here. From you're getting PoE Plus from a Pro PoE switch. That's going to on power a Switch Flex, and then that can also provide power through to a couple of cameras and maybe an AC mesh device as well. Benefit of all of this, you can then push all the Switch Flex and the G3 cameras and the mesh. They're all weather resistant as well, so you can also plug those ones outside, and that's all going to be perfectly fine to enhance your security and Wi-Fi outside in whichever area you want to, because they're all weather resistant apart from the switch, which is not weather resistant, the Gen2 switch that is. All right, so another great addition to any deployment is the UniFi Smart Power Redundant Power System. This is a proprietary redundant power system designed to protect up to 6 supported devices from any sudden power supply module failure. This RPS device continually monitors all attached devices. In the event of an internal power supply failure, failover is automatic, so your network can continue to operate with no interruptions in service. Internally, it has a 950 watt DC power budget, so enabling it to protect a variety of high power devices, including the UDM Pro and the UniFi Pro and Enterprise Gen2 switches we've mentioned today. And just like the others, there's also an integrated 1.3-inch color touchscreen, which displays system information for convenient monitoring. As you can see here, this device only takes up 1 RU, like the UDM Pro and the others, so it can easily be integrated into any environment. So please keep in mind that this UniFi Smart Power is not a UPS, it is an RPS, so it's a redundant power system, and which means it has no batteries. So it would be best to plug the RPS into a UPS, such as a Power Shield or an APC. You may, however, seen a version of this with batteries, but that is currently only available in the US. But it may come to Australia soon. But we'll wait and see. So just so you know, there's only one UniFi Smart Power cable in the box. So if you look at doing a multi-device deployment, Leader has conveniently plugged these into bundle packs. So we've got a twin pack or a 6-pack, so you can actually bundle with Save. And that concludes everything that we wanted to cover off today in today's webinar. I'm going to open it now for a Q&A session. So make sure that if you haven't already, make sure that you are putting your questions into the chat box, and then we're going to spend a little moment here and cover those questions off.
Yeah, thank you very much for that.
That's
really good so far. And thank you to everybody for the questions. I've been, my fingers are now aching. I've been typing so fast. You guys have really put through a lot of awesome questions so far. So that's been really great. Just a couple to go over so that everyone's sort of on the same page. Somebody mentioned about replacement batteries in terms of the RPS and that sort of thing. So the USP RPS, it's redundant power system. It's not a UPS. It's purely for redundant power. So that RPS system, you would actually plug into a third-party UPS like a Power Shield or an APC or something like that, and that would provide the sort of dual power supply that you typically find in enterprise switches and routers and that sort of thing. There is a version of that coming, as Darren mentioned, with batteries included in it, and they are swappable. So you can actually use external batteries as well as the internal battery you can swap out. But those are still coming soon. Again, hopefully this year. Should be looking at about Q4, but obviously we'll let you know more about that when we actually do have access to it. But at the moment, it's all in early access. So really good question there. And then just with regards to the Talk system, IP Talk from UniFi, a lot of queries with regards to the Talk phones. At the moment, yes, this is only available with the UniFi Talk phones. We are trying to get them to open it up to third-party phones, just like they're opening it up to third-party SIP providers, but we haven't got any confirmation on that yet. So unfortunately, I can't say yes or no if they're going to go ahead with it, but we are pushing them on it, and they do seem receptive at the moment. But don't hold me to that just yet. We'll let you know how it goes. And then let's just have a look at some of the other questions. So PoE++ to a flex switch goes over budget when PoE+ devices are connected to 3 of the PoE+ ports. Yes, very good information by Jason Mead. You do have to be careful with your PoE budget. So PoE++ obviously only provides a certain amount of wattage. If you overdraw on that wattage by powering up other PoE devices, it's going to have a bit of an issue. So you do need to be careful with your PoE budgets and make sure that you're not overtaxing that switch. So be mindful, you can't put PoE+ devices like big CCTV cameras and fill up all of the ports. You're going to run out of that wattage. So you do have to be a bit more cautious with that. That's a really good note by, sorry, who was that? I think that was, I've lost the question now, by Jason Mead. Thank you, Jason. Are there any other plans to have a completely integrated controller in the cloud like the Dream Machine is doing with the hardware? At the moment, I haven't heard anything about that at this stage, but we're hoping to see that sort of thing coming soon. The reason why I say that is there's a new line of USG gateways that are going to be coming out from Ubiquiti towards the end of the year, and I believe that's going to sort of cater for that market or that industry a little bit better than the UDM Pros would. So stay tuned. Hopefully that is coming. Next question was, the UC CloudKey Gen2 Plus with the hard drive relies on the hard drive to run the UniFi OS, i.e. if the hard drive fails, the device fails. Is this the same on the UDM Pro? That's an awesome question. So just to clarify on that, the CloudKey Gen2 Plus comes with a standard hard drive. And as you mentioned, if you yank that hard drive out or if it fails, unfortunately, the whole thing just sort of falls over. Whereas with the UDM Pro, the hard drive is completely optional. It's actually got a built-in flash storage. Don't hold me to this, but I think it's 128 gig, if my memory serves me correctly. And that's what's actually got the OS sitting on it. So you can actually fire up a UDM Pro with no hard drive in it at all. So they actually come standard out of the box with no hard drive installed. Leader just provides the extra option to buy one with a hard drive pre-installed if you want it. So no, you do not need a hard drive, or if the hard drive fails, whatever the case is, that thing will still carry on running, and the controller software at least will carry on performing perfectly with no issues. So that was a really good question. Thank you very much. Wow, these questions keep coming in thick and fast. With this COVID situation, when is Ubiquiti going to change? Sorry, say again.
A lot of passionate people out there.
Yeah, I mean, obviously everyone loves the Ubiquiti brand quite a lot, but struggling to keep up. Himanshu has a really good question with regards to the COVID situation and our training courses. Unfortunately, you know, Ubiquiti is pretty much stuck in their ways in terms of the training. We're trying to get them to move it to more of a sort of virtualized scenario. But, you know, in terms of the face-to-face trainings, it's one of the reasons why Darren has now joined our team. He's going to be taking over that full training system and trying to push that out and get a lot more face-to-face trainings going, you know, in the coming months. So please bear with us on that. We are pushing hard to sort of get as much training going, get as much calendar bookings going as we can, and we will obviously keep driving that as best we possibly can as well. When can we expect the new USG devices? As I mentioned, towards the end of the year, we're hoping sort of Q4. They are available now in the US as early access, so it means that the hardware designs and the like are finished. They're just sort of running through their final test phases in the US. Ubiquiti usually likes to deploy them in you know, customer environments and that sort of thing, and get feedback from their early access patrons. And then once they've got feedback and they know things are working properly and the software or firmware is okay, then they start sort of pushing it out into the channel, and we can start placing our orders and getting stock. So I'd be very surprised if we don't see them this year. Probably towards the end of the year is when they'll actually arrive. Wow, so many more questions here. I don't think we're going to be able to get to all of these while still being in our time frame. We'll try and think. Yeah, it's we'll see if we can get through one or two more.
Sure.
So let me just flick through these quickly. Good question just about the webinar in general. Will we be able to watch this after the event? Yes, absolutely. This is being recorded, so it'll be available here on GoToWebinar. We're also going to export it and put it in our Leader Academy website for you. For any of you who, it's actually on the screen now, any of you who want to check it out, leaderacademy.com.au, we've got a load of different content on there, you know, previous webinars, training courses, that sort of thing, all available for free. So please go and check it out. Get your staff members to check it out. It's a great free platform just to sort of get them beefed up on their knowledge as well. Can you discuss what leader support options are available for UniFi support and what the contact points are? That's an awesome one. Thank you, Jason Mead, for that. So again, we've got the support numbers on the screen in front of you now. So that is office hours support. It's totally free. So this is actually paid for by Leader. We've got some of the best staff members doing this. They're actually ex-Ubiquiti engineers. Albert, Anvil, and Sandy. There's three of them that mainly head this department at this stage. And they are great guys and they're very knowledgeable. So anytime you guys need support, whether it's small stuff or advanced stuff, these guys really know their stuff and they can log in and help you remotely with anything like that. So it's all during business hours. And yeah, they can either open up tickets via email if you prefer that, or if it's a really urgent thing, feel free to use the phone number and give them a physical phone call, and they'll get you running ASAP. They do sort of log in remotely and do sort of remote hands-on support as well. So if something's really sticky and you need some advanced support, they'll happily cater for that. So that's a really good one. Thank you, Jason. I think we're gonna have to cut it off there for the questions. I'll try and keep answering them in the back end as we go through. But from my side, thank you very much to everybody for attending. I'm going to hand back over to Darren now. It's time for that moment you've all been waiting for that awesome prize draw. So Darren, over to you, buddy.
Thank you very much. Alrighty. So yeah, as Chris just introduced a nice introduction to there for the the chance to win a UniFi Switch 16 PoE. Are we all ready? I hope you are. A lot of nervous people in the seats now. I'm ready with, it's going to go here. Chris, can you just confirm that you can see that?
Yep, all good.
Perfect. Okay, cool. I hope we're ready. I'm going to spin it now. Who is our lucky winner? Troy Williams. Fantastic. Congratulations. So Tony
Nice one,
Williams.
Tony. Thank you.
Apologies.
All good.
Apologies, no,
Tony
Williams.
Tony will obviously contact you after this and get you your Switch. Congratulations. That's a really nice little prize for you. And just before we do sign off, obviously, you know, you've got Darren's contact details. From me personally, Chris Sutherland, you're more than welcome to drop me an email as well. It's chris.sutherland@leadersystems.com.au. We're always happy to answer any questions, whether it be, you know, of a technical nature, pricing, if you guys want help developing or planning a system or a solution, whatever it may be. You know, we're pretty flexible and we like to get, you know, hands-on and involved with you guys. So please, you know, feel free to contact us with whatever queries you may have, and we're very happy to help from this end. And yeah, from my side, thank you very much for attending. It's been a great session, and thank you to you as well, Darren. I think you did a really good job with this one, and it's been a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I really appreciate everybody sticking around all the way to the end and listening to me waffle on a little bit, and hopefully you've all learned something about the UDM Pro and the Gen2 switches that are available right now through our Leader dealer shop. If you're all able to, feel free to provide me and us with any feedback. I've just got a QR code on the screen. We'd really appreciate it. Always striving to making sure that the content that we deliver to you is what you're needing, what you're after. So we'd really appreciate your feedback. I'll just leave that on the screen. But thank you very much again for you all attending us here today.